Hey everybody, today I want to talk about taking advice, and specifically what I want to talk about is whether or not other people do the things that they recommend that I do. I realize it's much easier to recommend to somebody that, oh, you should completely tear that tank down, completely strip it out and start over fresh. Those are easy words to say, but do people really do that every time they get some algae in their aquarium? I'm a little curious about that. I get comments on a fairly regular basis about stripping my tanks down and just starting over. And it's usually based on I've got algae in the tank. For example, a few days ago I did a video, it was before and after. Somebody suggested I tore the whole tank down and started over simply because I had Java moss growing on the filter, which I had waited very patiently for it to develop like that, and yet because that moss was there, I was being told the whole tank should be stripped down and started over. Last night I did a video where I cleaned my wife's tank, and all that was really dirty about the tank, all that was wrong with it, was I had some algae growing on the glass, and some of the Java moss got a little overgrown, which Java moss tends to do. And so I did a simple water change. I wiped the glass down, removed some of the Java moss, and put a new filter pad in it. To me, that just seems like basic maintenance. It took me 15 minutes to do the whole tank, and yet once again I got a comment about how it would have been easier just to tear the tank down, or possibly it would have been better. Again, I'm not sure what the reasoning behind this is, and I don't know what it's supposed to accomplish. If I tear the tank down and re-establish it, is it now not going to grow algae in it? Is it different water or something? Is it not? Like, what difference does it make if I tear the tank down and start over? It's a whole lot of work, a whole lot of disruption to my nitrogen cycle, the fish's lives, the look of the tank, and everything else. And then by the time the tank gets reestablished, algae is going to start growing in it. And I'm just fascinated by this idea that people will literally strip down a tank because it has algae in it. I can understand it if you had some issue where just no matter what happened, every time you put fish in there, they got fungus infections and they died, and you just couldn't get on top of all these fish dying and whatever. All right, maybe then I guess it would be a reasonable suggestion to just scrap it, sterilize the tank, and start over. There must be something bad, like, just in there somewhere. I don't know. I've never had an experience like that before. But the times I get told that I should reestablish my tank is when people see that there's like algae growing on the glass, or there's cyanobacteria on some of the rocks or whatever, and it just fascinates me how quickly people assume that because your tank now looks like an aquatic environment, you should start over. What is it supposed to look like is my other question. It's an aquatic environment. It's supposed to have stuff growing in it. It has fish in it. It's got plants in it. It's got woodwork in there. Do you think it's not going to have algae and stuff growing on the rocks and stuff growing on the plant leaves and everything? That's just not realistic. It doesn't look realistic. It looks like, well, there are some people out there, and I know this for a fact because I've spoken with several of them over the years. There are people out there that when they do water changes, if they have a relatively simple scape in their tank, a few plastic plants and some rocks and maybe a fake cave or something like that, they literally take all of their ornaments out of the tank and scrub them off with a brush in the sink and rinse them all off and get them all nice and brand new looking again, and then put them back in the tank at every water change. Their goal is to have the tank look completely unnatural and to look like it just was set up an hour ago. And their opinion, which is just fine, that's what they think looks good for a fish tank, and that's fine if that's how they want to do their fish tank. But the idea that something like this, I mean, should I scrap this tank and start over? Clearly there's algae in there, there's cyanobacteria that grows in there. I have to wipe the glass down every few days. In fact, I have to wipe the glass down again now already. I just did it a few days ago, and there's algae growing on my glass again. I suppose I need to tear this whole tank down and start like, it just does not make any sense to me. Who does that? Who suggests that you tear your tank down and start over simply because there's some algae growing in, or some of the plants have grown a little out of control? That's the best reason yet. Your plants are growing out of control? Oh, don't get in there and trim the plants a little bit. Tear the whole tank down and start over. It just makes no sense. So I'm just curious as to whether or not other people do this sort of thing. Medications are the other thing I get. somebody will see in a video where a fish flashes against a rock or something, and immediately they're telling me I should quarantine that fish and put it in, medicate this and put that in a tank and raise the temperature, and you should start putting salt in that tank. Again, do people really do all that stuff every time they see a fish that acts a little bit unusual or maybe flashes against some rocks or something once in a while, and then they rush out and just start medicating their tanks? I get that comment a lot too, and I generally don't follow any of this advice because I know better, and it usually works itself out. As far as the aesthetics of the tank, I like it to look like it's a natural aquatic environment. I think that's what it's supposed to look like. If you'd like to have it just all sterile and shiny and brand new and everything looks like you just put it in there 15 minutes ago, that's fine, go ahead and do that. But just stop telling me I need to redo my entire tanks and strip my entire tank down because you see some algae in it. That really just blows my mind that I get that recommendation. So from this point forth, especially from my regular viewers and whatnot, I'm going to assume that that's just going to be a running joke, and people are just funning with me when they tell me I should strip my tanks down and start over. But the comments I've gotten up until this point, I've always taken seriously, and I won't even say that they're necessarily being rude or that they're being judgmental necessarily. They're almost saying it as though they're offering me some helpful advice. Like, just trust me, it'll be far easier in the long run if you just strip it down and start over, and you're going to be fighting it forever if you keep doing what you're doing. Just strip it down and start over. That's going to be your best approach. And that's the advice I'm giving, as though they're really genuinely giving me good, helpful advice. So again, I don't know, to each their own. We all have our different ways of keeping fish in the hobby and whatnot, but that just seems insane to me. It really does. Just you get some algae growing in the tank, or a little bit of stuff is on the glass, or your plants are getting a little bushy where they need to be trimmed back because they're blocking some of the view and the fish can't really swim around anymore. That's not time to strip the tank out and start over. It's time to just do some tank maintenance, wipe the glass down and trim the plants. So anyway, I don't know why that's been on my mind so much today, but it really has, and I felt like I needed to sit down and shoot a video about it. So that's my sort of 2 cents on that. I'd be interested to hear what your comments are. Do you have videos out there? Do people tell you need to do your tank over all the time? Do you strip out your tank and do it over just because you see some algae growing in there or whatever? I'd be fascinated to know all this stuff. But that's my 2 cents for that. Anyway, make sure you're subscribed, and that way you won't miss anything I've got coming up or whatever's on my mind on any particular day that I feel like sitting down and shooting a video. I do live streams every Friday night and Sunday night, Eastern time, 8 p.m. Don't miss those. Memberships, all that good stuff. You know all the routine by now. So thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you real soon in the next one.